There are many unions that dazzle the senses, sweep through the seasons of our lives, and then dissolve as mist. But there are a few, very few, that seem to come with the hush of heaven. They arrive not in noise, but in knowing, not in performance, but in presence. And when they do, the soul does not merely react, it recognizes. The first sign is peace, not the kind born from the absence of conflict, but the kind that enters a room before they do. You find yourself unguarded not because you've calculated the risks, but because your soul exhales in their presence. It's not infatuation. It's not adrenaline. It is serenity and inner stillness that whispers here, you are safe. This peace does not contradict reality, but it steadies you to face it. It anchors you. The connection becomes a shelter not from life, but in it. The second sign is purpose. A connection ordained by God will not detour your calling, it will illuminate it. You begin to dream not only for yourself, but with another and for something greater than the both of you. You find yourself more awake, more convicted, more called. Your talents are stirred. Your vision is sharpened. Their presence does not compete with your destiny, it complements it. This kind of connection doesn't ask you to become smaller so the other can shine. It asks both of you to rise higher, holier, humbler. The third sign is the way trials shape the bond. A God-ordained connection is not proven in the easy moments, but in the crucible of testing. And yet, instead of breaking, it deepens. You don't see suffering as a sign to flee, but as a space to grow. The hard moments don't make you question the connection, they draw you back to it. You begin to realize this isn't a bond built on mutual benefit, but mutual belief that God is doing something in and through you both. Storms may come, but so does the deepening of trust. The rains may fall, but they do not wash away what is eternal. Some connections look good on paper, some feel right in passing, but the ones that are God ordained, they leave traces of heaven wherever they go. You don't have to chase them, force them, or fear losing them. They arrive when your soul is ready and not a moment sooner. And when they do, you will know not because it's perfect, but because it's divinely purposed. There is a kind of love that lives in novels, flourishes in music, and dances on the surface of our imaginations. It is intense, emotional, wildly expressive, and more often than not, fleeting. It is the love that thrives in the heat of the moment, survives on dramatic highs and poetic confessions, and depends heavily on reciprocated feelings. This love is sentimental. It intoxicates quickly and evaporates quietly. And while there is beauty in the rawness of human affection, sentimentalism alone cannot sustain something that was meant to be sacred. God does not ordain connections based solely on how deeply we feel in a given hour. His design goes deeper than feelings, it touches the soul. The spiritual connection, in contrast, is not always loud. It is often quiet, reverent, and clothed in peace. It may not quicken the pulse in the way a romantic scene might, but it stills the soul, calms the mind, and gently elevates the heart towards something higher than self. Where sentimental love begs to be seen, validated, and reassured, spiritual love simply exists, content to serve, to endure, to give without demand. It knows that true intimacy is born not in chemistry alone, but in the mutual recognition of divine presence between two souls. A spiritual connection does not begin with fireworks, it begins with fruit. You find yourself more patient, more kind, more humble, more willing to bend. It is not that the emotional isn't present, it is simply not the foundation. There is something sacred about being drawn to someone not because of what they awaken in your desires, but because of what they awaken in your worship. You find that being near them stirs something eternal in you, something not dependent on physical beauty or emotional satisfaction, but on the quiet certainty that God is in the midst. The sentimental heart can be easily misled because it seeks experiences to validate its truth. But spiritual discernment listens for alignment. It is not swayed by temporary affection, but grounded in eternal intention. This is the difference between soul hunger and soul peace. One is restless until it is fed again. The other is full even in stillness. In a God-ordained connection, you are not constantly measuring whether the other person makes you feel enough. You are instead reflecting on how their presence draws you toward holiness, how your union magnifies something divine. Often people mistake intensity for depth. They confuse emotional volatility for passion. They interpret butterflies as signs from heaven and silence as absence. But heaven speaks in ways the world often misses. A spiritual connection can be marked not by loud declarations, but by shared prayer. Not by emotional highs, but by deep understanding. Not by the constant exchange of affirmation, but by the consistent evidence of growth. It is not concerned with being impressive. It is concerned with being aligned. Sentiment is like the tide, it comes and goes. But spiritual love is like the ocean floor, unseen, unmoved, and foundational. While sentimental attraction may fluctuate with mood or circumstance, a spiritual bond remains. It is steady in the storm. It holds its posture even when the emotional weather changes. In fact, it is in the absence of sentiment that the spiritual reveals its worth. When the feelings fade, as they inevitably do in every relationship, the spiritual endures. It picks up where the sentimental leaves off. In sentimental love, people seek to be understood, adored, and pursued. But in spiritual love, people seek to understand, to serve, and to remain. It does not seek to consume, but to protect. It sees the other not as an extension of its own desire, but as a reflection of God's workmanship. And in that recognition, the relationship becomes more than comfort, it becomes calling. There is nothing wrong with sentiment. Emotions are gifts. They flavor the experience of connection, and they remind us of the beauty of human expression. But when emotion becomes the compass instead of the companion, we are likely to drift into illusions. The heart is not meant to lead alone. It must walk in step with the Spirit. And when it does, love becomes more than an escape. It becomes a holy encounter. We live in a world where mystery surrounds the workings of God. His ways are higher, His timing often concealed, and His thoughts far above human comprehension. Yet within the fog of divine mystery, there often emerges a surprising clarity, not the kind of clarity that offers every answer, but one that steadies the soul with a deep, quiet knowing. In the realm of relationships, especially those orchestrated by the hand of God, there is both divine concealment and divine revelation. And the person who learns to walk with God learns to dwell in both, to accept the unsearchable nature of God's will, while trusting that He will not withhold the confirmation needed for peace. A God-ordained connection may not always come wrapped in explanation, but it will never be built on confusion. Mystery is not the same as chaos. Confusion is the byproduct of disorder, of competing voices, of internal dissonance. But God is not the author of confusion. He may choose to reveal things slowly, layer by layer, but the path He ordains will be marked with quiet assurance, even if it is not yet fully understood. The heart may still be uncertain of the future, but it will carry a peculiar calm about the present. There is no striving, no constant searching for signs, no endless anxiety needing validation. Instead, there is a light that leads just far enough to take the next step, and that is enough. In sentimental relationships or ones forged in flesh, questions multiply. Is this right? Should I stay? What if I'm wrong? What if I'm alone? These questions are loud, circular, and exhausting. But when God authors a connection, the questions shift. They become less about whether the person is perfect for you and more about whether you are becoming who you need to be in God. There is a clarity that emerges not from the predictability of the relationship, but from the presence of divine peace within it. You may not know where it's all leading, but you are not tormented by your not knowing. That is the essence of spiritual clarity. Amid mystery, you don't need all the answers to be certain of the direction. Some think God's mystery is cruel, a withholding of what we most desire to understand. But mystery is often mercy. It protects us from running ahead of what our hearts are ready to carry. It draws us closer to God, forcing dependence, deepening trust. And yet, even in that mystery, there is provision. God gives glimpses sometimes in timing, sometimes in the fruit of peace, sometimes in the way circumstances unfold with supernatural alignment. A conversation, a shared purpose, a word of confirmation from an unexpected source, these become breadcrumbs of clarity on the path God is revealing. Clarity is not always loud. Sometimes it is a soft settling of the soul, a sigh that escapes when two hearts meet in prayer, a sense that you are both listening to the same voice, even when no words are exchanged. There is no panic in your spirit, no pressure to possess or impress. You find yourself present, attentive, and at rest. You are not constantly trying to decode the other person or prove your worth. Clarity has a way of removing the need for manipulation or control. It invites you to be who you are in Christ and allows the other to do the same. In many ways, God uses mystery to test whether we are walking by faith or by emotion. He allows seasons of silence so we learn to listen deeper, to sense His presence not just in circumstances but in conviction. But He never leaves us without direction. His Spirit is not stingy with wisdom. He may not unfold the full picture, but He will always confirm what needs to be known. A God-ordained connection does not beg for attention. It grows steadily, nourished by peace, sustained by prayer, and guided by truth. The world around us demands certainty, instant clarity, and logical progression. But God's kingdom operates differently. He often speaks in whispers, nudges, and inner confirmations. And yet, in the quiet of walking with Him, we discover that not all mystery is meant to be solved. Some of it is meant to be stewarded. Within that sacred mystery, we begin to recognize the unmistakable signature of God, not in the thunder, but in the still small voice. Not in dramatic gestures, but in unwavering consistency. Not in the lightning bolt of certainty, but in the lantern light of revelation, just enough to see the next step, just enough to move forward in faith without fear, just enough to trust that He is near even when the path is not fully clear. There is a quiet distinction between simply being present in someone's life and being purposefully present. Many people come into our lives as spectators, witnesses to our journey, companions for a time, sometimes helpful, sometimes comforting, but often passive in their impact. But those sent by divine design do not merely exist alongside us. Their presence is intentional. It is purposeful. It is threaded into the very story that God is writing with our lives. These are the connections where presence and purpose are inseparable, where the companionship is not the goal, but the means through which something holy, weighty, and eternal is being formed. We often imagine purpose as solitary pursuit, as though calling is a road we walk alone. But there are some callings that are only fulfilled in the company of another. Some missions are so large, so sacred, that they require two souls walking in unity, sharpening one another, holding each other accountable, drawing each other closer to the truth. These are not casual partnerships. They are forged in the Spirit, born in prayer, and marked by shared vision. And when they happen, presence becomes more than relational, it becomes catalytic. In a God-ordained connection, the mere act of being together invokes movement toward growth. You do not lose yourself in the other, you find yourself becoming more fully the person you were always meant to be. The relationship does not distract from your calling, it clarifies it. You see more clearly. You live more fully. Their presence is not an interruption to your assignment, it is woven into it like golden thread in a divine Isamain. They do not replace God's voice in your life, but they help you hear it more clearly. And in their nearness, you are drawn closer not to comfort alone, but to calling. Purpose, in this context, is not limited to a job or title or external goal. It is something deeper, a sense that your life is aimed in a direction that glorifies God, that redeems brokenness, that brings light into dark places. And when someone enters your life with a similar trajectory, a holy harmony begins to emerge. You begin to labor together, to believe together, to build together. Conversations shift from superficial exchanges to soul-defining clarity. Time together is not wasted or frivolous. It is rich, fruitful, and formative. Even silence between you feels like soil in which something good is growing. There is something profoundly spiritual about walking with someone whose presence awakens purpose. Their faith strengthens yours. Their insight stretches you. Their discipline challenges your complacency. And the connection becomes not just about what you can receive, but about what you are both becoming. It is a sacred partnership in which the glory of God is the goal, and love real, selfless, transformative love is the method. You learn to sacrifice not because it's demanded, but because purpose calls for it. You learn to wait, to listen, to yield, not out of fear, but because you understand that this connection is not yours to control, it is God's to orchestra. When presence is fused with purpose, even the mundane moments become meaningful. A conversation over coffee can turn into spiritual alignment. A shared burden becomes an opportunity to intercede. A laugh shared in joy echoes with eternal gladness. There is an awareness that time together is not merely about companionship, but about preparation. God is doing something in both of you, and often through you, and every interaction carries the weight of that unseen work. You may not always see the fruit immediately, but you sense that seeds are being planted, watered, and stewarded with care. This kind of relationship does not rush toward outcomes. It does not demand constant affirmation or extravagant display. It moves slowly, intentionally, obediently. You walk forward not because of emotion, but because of conviction. And even when doubts arise or seasons shift, the thread of purpose holds strong. You are not held together by comfort alone, but by commitment to something larger than the both of you. The relationship becomes a space in which God is glorified, others are blessed, and your own life is continually refined. There will be moments when that purpose challenges your comfort, when being close to someone whose life is tied to your calling forces you to confront your own weaknesses, your own laziness, your own fear. But that is the work of love, not to shield you from discomfort, but to summon you to courage. And when their presence continues to stir you toward goodness, toward growth, toward grace, you know this is more than mere connection. It is a divine appointment where purpose is not just shared, but interwoven with every word spoken, every prayer offered, every quiet moment spent in the nearness of one another. In the heart of every meaningful relationship lies the question, what will we become when we suffer? It is easy to love when skies are clear and paths are smooth. Affection flows effortlessly when joy is abundant and hopes are aligned. But when pain enters, as it always does in a fallen world, it tests not only the structure of the relationship, but the substance of the souls within it. Pain reveals what comfort conceals. And in a God ordained connection, pain does not destroy. It refines, it does not divide, it purifies. Many fear pain in relationships because they believe it is a sign that something is wrong, that if hardship arises, then perhaps the connection is flawed or not meant to be. But such a view misunderstands the nature of love forged under heaven's guidance. God never promised that unity would come without cost. In fact, He often allows suffering to sanctify the bond between two people. He uses trial as fire not to burn love away, but to burn away all that is false within it. In this way, pain becomes holy. It becomes the furnace where selfishness melts, pride dissolves, and what remains is pure and enduring. A connection that crumbles at the first sign of pressure was built on something other than truth. It was assembled with the fragile threads of convenience, excitement, or superficial compatibility. But a connection that has been entrusted to God can withstand the blows of life because its roots reach deeper than circumstances. When adversity comes, it drives both souls not away from each other, but toward the one who is able to sustain them both. Pain becomes not the end of intimacy, but its deepening. In sorrow, you learn to serve rather than seek to be served. In misunderstanding, you learn to listen instead of defend. In loss, you discover how to hold space for another's grief, even when your own heart is breaking. It is not uncommon for divine connections to be forged in the midst of suffering. There is something about shared sorrow that awakens a unique kind of intimacy, one that cannot be manufactured in ease. When two souls endure trial together, they begin to see each other not as projects or puzzles, but as pilgrims. There is grace in simply walking together through pain. You do not need to have answers. You only need to be present, to stand near, to hold each other in prayer when words fail. In that sacred place, love is no longer theoretical. It is incarnated, it takes on flesh. It endures wounds. In such relationships, pain teaches patience. It teaches that growth does not always look like forward movement. Sometimes it looks like standing still together in a storm. Sometimes it looks like forgiveness offered before an apology is given. Sometimes it looks like waiting without resolution, trusting that God is working beneath the surface, even when all you see is silence. The beauty of pain in a God-led union is that it humbles both parties. It levels the field. No one gets to be the hero. No one gets to be the savior. Both are brought to the cross, where all striving ceases and grace becomes the only thing left to hold on to. Pain also has a way of revealing hidden idols, the parts of the heart that wanted control, wanted to be right, wanted affirmation at any cost. Those surfaces are exposed in suffering. And when they are brought into the light, there is the opportunity not for shame, but for healing. The best connections are not those that avoid this process, but those that endure it and emerge more honest, more holy, and more human. In this way, pain does not just test love, it sanctifies it. Even when the pain is not shared, when one suffers while the other watches, the dynamic becomes sacred. The suffering one learns to be vulnerable. The witnessing one learns to be steadfast. Love matures in these moments. It grows up. It sheds its romanticized notions and becomes something fierce and faithful. It becomes a covenant rather than a convenience. It becomes less about what is given and more about what is carried. There is a sacred beauty in a bond that has been through fire and has not disintegrated. Such a relationship bears the marks of endurance, not scars of destruction, but marks of refinement. Like gold in the crucible, it shines brighter because it has been tested. Pain in this divine context becomes the very element through which love is proved to be real, unshakable, and eternal. There are moments in life so inexplicably sacred that they do not fit neatly into the confines of chronology. They arrive with a strange familiarity, as though you have encountered something your soul has always known, long before your mind could name it. This is the essence of timeless recognition, not the familiarity of shared history, but the echo of eternity breaking into time. It is the sense that in meeting another person, you are not beginning something new, but remembering something old, not in a mystical or romanticized sense, but in a way that affirms how God, outside of time, ordains moments that we only later understand were waiting for us from the beginning. We are often told that love takes time, that it grows slowly through shared experience and deliberate effort. And while this is true in many ways, for love indeed matures through patience and sacrifice, there are also encounters that transcend the usual progression. There are souls you meet and do not need to get to know, because in some unspoken way your spirit already does. Not in the shallow familiarity of preference or personality, but in the deep recognition of essence of divine alignment. These are not encounters born from accident, but appointments made in eternity and revealed in time. Such recognition is not about physical attraction or surface-level compatibility. It is not about shared hobbies or coincidental timing. It is about the unmistakable awareness that your paths were always meant to cross, not for personal gain or emotional fulfillment alone, but because there is something holy to be unveiled in the presence of the other. You recognize not just their face or voice, but something deeper, the fragrance of their calling, the weight of their soul, the spiritual resonance of their walk with God. You see the reflection of something sacred in them, and perhaps through them, the clearer outline of who you are in Christ. Timeless recognition often arrives without announcement. It is not forced. It is not orchestrated. It does not need to be persuaded or explained. It settles upon you like dawn, quiet and sure. There is a peace to it, a restfulness in the knowing, even when you cannot yet articulate the full meaning of the connection dot, and that is part of the mystery. For God, who dwells beyond time, sometimes permits us to taste eternity in a glance, in a moment, in a seemingly ordinary meeting that carries infinite weight. This recognition is often subtle. It does not always come with emotional fireworks or cinematic music. It may feel more like a quiet stillness, a sudden clarity, or a soft stirring in the spirit that cannot be denied. And though it may be new to your daily life, it does not feel new to your soul. There is a sense that you have entered into a chapter already written, one that your heart has long anticipated, even if your mind is only now catching up. In this way, it feels less like discovery and more like awakening. When God ordains such a meeting, it is rarely for sentiment alone. There is purpose tied to the recognition. It may be to labor together in kingdom work, to grow through shared sanctification, to reflect Christ more clearly through your union. Whatever the purpose, the recognition is not for indulgence, but for stewardship. You are being entrusted with something eternal disguised in the skin of the temporal. And how you handle that trust will shape not only your journey, but possibly the journeys of many others. In timeless recognition, time itself seems to bend. You may feel closer to someone after days than others you have known for years. It is not about the length of acquaintance, but the depth of alignment. There is no rush, no pressure to prove or perform. The bond exists because God has spoken it into being, and the Spirit bears witness within you. It is not governed by logic, though it is not illogical. It is not bound by schedules, though it respects order. It simply is, and that is its power. Its authenticity is in its being, not its explanation. It is tempting in such moments to grasp too tightly, to define too quickly, or to move too fast. But recognition is not possession. It is revelation. And revelation must be met with reverence. You do not need to make sense of it all. You only need to receive it, honor it, and remain attentive to the one who revealed it. For if God authored the connection, he will sustain its unfolding. And though time may pass and seasons may shift, what is born of the eternal will not be diminished by delay, uncertainty, or distance. It exists outside of time because it was never merely temporal to begin with. There are moments in the soul's journey when earth feels strangely thin, when the veil between this world and the next seems to flutter, and a sound not born of time reverberates within. These moments are not crafted by man, nor are they easily explained. They do not come by force or demand. They come gently, like wind through leaves, like light filtering through cathedral glass. They are whispers from beyond the veil, reminders that we were made for something more, something eternal, something holy. When a soul hears heaven's echo, it does not merely remember God. It remembers home. This echo is not always loud. In fact, it is often discovered in silence. It reverberates not through noise, but through stillness in the hush after prayer, in the quiet companionship of someone who understands without needing to speak, in the solitary ache of longing that words cannot satisfy. It does not compete for attention. It waits to be recognized by the part of you that was never meant to live on bread alone. And when it is heard, even faintly, it changes everything. The echo of heaven does not ask for your applause. It demands your awakening. There are people, too, through whom this echo becomes audible, not because they are perfect or spectacular, but because their lives are attuned to a frequency beyond the world's static. When you meet such a soul, you sense not merely their personality or their charm, but their alignment with the eternal. Something about them sings of heaven. They speak and their words carry more than sound, they carry weight. They walk into a room, and their presence does not draw attention to themselves, but lifts the gaze of others towards something higher. Being with them feels like a distraction from life's burdens and more like a return to what truly matters. When God sends a person whose spirit echoes heaven's song, it is never random. Such connections are not accidents of circumstance, but arrangements of providence. They are signs along the pilgrim path, urging us to keep walking, reminding us that we are not alone, not forgotten, not meant to stay here forever. They awaken dormant places within us, places where wonder still lives, where truth still burns, where hope has not yet given up. And sometimes the recognition of such a person is not based on what they say, but on what stirs within you when you're near them. They don't complete you, they confirm something you've always carried but perhaps forgotten. that eternity is real and it is drawing near. Heaven's echo is not limited to mountaintop revelations or angelic visitations. It hides in ordinary places, in laughter shared over a meal, in tears offered without shame, in the steadfastness of someone who shows up when others walk away. It is in the quiet courage of those who keep loving when it costs them, who forgive when it is not deserved, who serve when no one is watching. These actions are not random. They are reverberations of the divine. They resonate because they originate in the heart of God. And though the world may not recognize such echoes, your soul will. You were made to respond to them. You were created not only to survive, but to sing, to find your note in the great symphony of heaven and join it with others who have found theirs. When two people hear the same echo, there is harmony. When they move not according to culture, but to calling, something eternal begins to unfold. Their union is not based on sentiment, but on sound, the sound of heaven echoing through their obedience, their prayers, their shared reverence for the sacred. In such a connection, time does not diminish resonance, it amplifies it. Seasons may change, paths may diverge, but if heaven has spoken, the echo remains. It lingers in memory, in dreams, in the quiet places of the heart where nothing unholy can intrude. It continues to draw both souls toward the source, not toward each other as the ultimate end, but toward God, who is the origin of all true connection. In this way, heaven's echo protects the bond. It keeps it pure. It reminds each person that the goal is not to worship the relationship, but to worship through it. There will be times when the world tries to drown out this echo with noise, with distraction, with disappointment. But those who have heard it cannot unhear it. It calls them back. It beckons them forward. It holds them steady in the in-between where promises are not yet fulfilled and glory still seems distant. And in the companionship of those who also hear it, the journey becomes bearable. Even in pain, even in confusion, there is peace because something deeper than circumstances, singing something older than time, something holy, something true.